Welcome to the first video in my devlog series for the City of Industry, an industrial economy simulation game. In this video, we'll be working on the initial start sequence for the game, where the player chooses to start a new game or continue an old game. From there, we'll pick a game type and then create our first player and company. Right now, we're just in the prototype phase, so expect the menus to be very basic and mostly non-functional, as we just need to be able to get to a point in the game where we can begin developing the gameplay. So let's dive in. My goal here is to create a basic menu structure for the player to select the game type that they want to play. Right now, we're just using plain white buttons, but the plan is to have either a static scene from each game type or a short looping video playing in each of the buttons. Unfortunately, the buttons aren't reflowing the way that I had hoped when I switched to gameplay mode, so I'm editing them and adjusting the anchor points to try to get them to reflow automatically. I had a terrible idea of trying to fix the button sizes in code and spent several hours trying to get that to work in the way that I wanted it to. What I should have done and ended up doing later was spending more time in the editor to get the anchor and pivot points set up correctly. It would have saved me a ton of time and effort. In this segment, I'm working on the first iteration of my UI manager. The idea here was to create a basic class that represents UI containers such as panels and have them automatically discovered by the game engine when it started. I spent way too much time on this and eventually ended up scrapping it for a much simpler system that kept the idea of the UI container base class and a manager class that would be added as a game object to each scene. The manager class would then have the UI container objects added to it at design time, and by calling manager.show or manager.hide, we can show or hide the containers that contain the UI elements easily. I'm including this footage here to show what happens when good ideas go bad. I knew early on that this was way too complicated for what I was trying to achieve, and that I should stop and start over again. But I was determined to make this work. And it did. And it sucked. And I scrapped it. I scrapped it after working on it off and on for about a week. Hopefully I'll remember this next time I start down a path like this and abandon it way earlier than I did this time. No! During the whole UI manager debacle, I started working on the company setup script using that UI framework I was developing. I also have a singleton implementation of a game manager object that right now only stores the player name, company name, and the chosen game type. I can add variables to this that I need to track as part of the game. Sadly, at this point in my Unity development career, I didn't understand how scene management was done and just added this to the camera object on the main scene. This was a mistake, and it's a mistake we'll rectify in the next video in the series, along with a generic singleton implementation that I shamelessly stole from a Unity repository. As you can see, we end up the devlog with a demo of the work completed so far. From the initial loading screen, which just tells you that no camera is rendering, into the main menu scene, which allows the player to choose a new game, pick a new forestry game, and then enter in basic company info. The final screen is a quick confirmation screen that displays what the player has chosen, and when the player confirms their choice, we move on to what we'll be working on next time, the main game scene. I'd like to thank Thin Matrix for the hours of devlog videos I've watched of his that inspired this series, along with Ben at BW Dev for inspiring me to do this with his videos, and especially for answering all the questions I had about recording and editing video. Please check out his channel, BW Dev, and follow the development of his indie game, Lumber Mill. I can't wait to play it. And follow Thin Matrix's devlogs using the links below in the description. I'll be happy to try and answer any questions I can, so post those in the comments below. If you like what I've put together here, please consider liking and subscribing to help grow the channel, and we'll see you next time.